All right, welcome. Thank you so much, Svanika, for being here and for that engaging presentation on the impacts that plastics have through a social justice lens. It's just something you don't always hear about and it's on people's radars, so thank you for bringing that to the forefront. And welcome to the rest of our panel. We have Dan Goodnow, CEO at the Natural Dog Company. Hello, hello. David Yaskulka from Mid-America Pet Food and Nature's Logic. Hello, David. And Lindsay Ray, Senior Brand Manager at Catalyst Pet. Excellent. So I'd like to start with Dan. What was your motivation for pursuing plastic offsets in the beginning? Hey, Dan, I think you might be muted. Hold, please. We're holding.
Thanks. I apologize about that. I was telling really good things there, really good jokes at the beginning. I'm sorry you guys missed them, but I'll just start from I was talking to people about this in our breakout session the other day or yesterday, I guess it was. The reason we kind of started down this path was we actually had customers reaching out to us and lighting us up on our website saying, hey, you guys say that you're natural and this kind of thing, but I can't believe how much plastic you're using. This is ridiculous. And my initial inclination was like, do you have any idea how hard it is to manage bugs and all the other factors that go into my product to make sure that you have a safe one? But cooler heads prevailed, and I decided not to do that. But we really started thinking about what it means to be a company that's interested in sustainability and trying to do the right thing, but at the same time be able to say, okay, plastic is part of our current process and something we have to use until we can find a better solution. Is there a way for us to do this better? And as we started doing more of the events with PSC and learning about some of these resources, when we found out about what Svanika was doing, we were like, hey, this sounds great. And we were pumped to get started with it. So we adopted as soon as we heard about it. And I can say that as a CEO and somebody who's running a small but really fast growing business, finding a solution for us that was plug and play and just kind of like little bit of thinking and a lot of impact was an awesome solution for us. And I wish that, Sonic, if you want to start working on carbon and climate, I'm happy to do whatever I need to do to say, you tell me how much it costs and I'll just do it. And that'll be easy for me. So.
Excellent. Lindsay, did you feel you had a similar kind of catalyst, or what was your experience like getting into this?
Yeah, ours was very similar. We started this, I think, really right off the bat as soon as we launched, because we do use number 4 LDPE packaging, which is 100% recyclable. But recyclable packaging for consumers is not something that people really think about. It's not something that they do. And there's so much education to still make that habit more of a habit for people. We wanted to ensure that while we use that bag for its durability, and it is 100% recyclable, we could also still have a positive impact, both from an environment standpoint, but also from a socioeconomic standpoint. Sustainability is a big part of our brand, and that's more than just what we're doing for the environment, but also what we're doing for the world and for the culture and for the people in it.
Excellent. What do you think, David? What was your experience?
Well, great work, both of you. And Monica, thank you. Another inspirational talk. When I was thinking of what brought us here, and I'm very proud that Nature's Logic was the first to introduce a certified plastic product line into the pet industry. And I thought, what got us there? And it came down to 4 eyes for me. And for those who know me, I no longer have 4 eyes after my cataract surgery. But you can remember the 4 eyes, and first came out of impatience. Every solution that I started researching 3 years ago was just a very long road. That's necessary. That's part of where we are. But a certified plastic neutral product had immediate impact, and that meant a lot. The second I, of course, is impact. I don't have to belabor everything you just said, Svanika. This is authentic impact, and immediate and authentic. And so the impact is significant. For me, the third was information. There are many sustainability options out there. What do I trust? Where do I go? And frankly, thank you, Pet Sustainability Coalition. That's where we go. The Pet Sustainability Coalition introduced us to rePurpose Global and Svanica and Certified Plastic Neutral, as PSC just did for all of you. And so that for us is always our go-to information source for sustainability. And sorry to talk so long, but the fourth I is me. Business always has an inherently selfish aspect. I need it to be great for business. Our consumers love certified plastic neutral. The seal is beautiful. As you heard from Svanica, it's such a rich story, but that seal summarizes it in a powerful way. So it helps sell our products. So sorry for the mnemonic there, but it all
great.
seemed to work with full eyes.
Yeah, definitely worked well. We'll go back to Lindsay. How has working with rePurpose reframed your way of thinking about plastic, the plastics crisis, and kind of the role you have to play in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple of different areas. One, we're very glad to have a partner that we can work with to make sure that we are plastic neutral, and continuing that consumer education on both sides from the brand standpoint, but also from what rePurpose Global is doing as well. It's also provided us a good way to have a solution while we find a longer term packaging solution, kind of like what Dan said, that fits with our product and fits and delivers still what we need it to. And that's partly working with packaging film people, manufacturers, to make sure that we're working with them to help find a right solution, a long-term biodegradable solution, whatever it may be. But it's really helped us give that platform mostly for consumer education. I think that's the biggest, most important piece of it.
Excellent. I'll go over to Dan.
Absolutely. I think, as a small brand trying to do a lot of different things, to have the seal on there that customers can go research on their own or understand what it is, and for us to be able to talk about that, it kind of feels like a shortcut, right? We may intend to do all these things. We would love to do all these things, but we don't possibly have the ability and the hours in the day and the wherewithal to get all this stuff rolling. So to be able to just say, hey, this is what we're up to, and if you guys want to research it, here's a beautiful website and a great story. It is fantastic, and I think that's, I get nervous about, unloading a quagmire of tiles on a consumer, but I think when they can dig in and see what's going on and have real clarity about what that means, I think it has a lot of power and it has a lot of benefit to consumers.
Yeah, definitely. David, I saw some thumbs up. What do you think?
Well, I just applaud what my colleagues here are doing. I think it's great. And again, for me, it's such an easy, quick solution. At Mid-America Pet Food, parent to Nature's Logic, we're working on a whole range of solutions. But I'll just say, and each of them I think is critical and is a big piece of the pie. And every one of them, like this, was introduced to us through Pet Sustainability Coalition. But this is the quickest and easiest and high impact. So that's why we're there.
So great to hear.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think I've told the folks at PSC that if I could have all the solutions this way, I would be all in. I mean, Svanica, you are my benchmark for I don't want to think about it. I just want to be able to do it, and just give me the tool and be able to move forward, and then it's done. So I mean what I said. If you come up with other avenues to consider, I'm sure your plate's full, but I'm all in.
Great.
Thank you so much. I think that's really lovely, and I think a lot of what we believe in, just to jump in there really quickly, Rachel, I think is that CPG brands out there are not kind of inherently evil, right? You're not sitting out there thinking about wow, I want to make the planet somehow a worse place. You definitely want to make it a better place. It's just about having kind of the affordable, accessible, efficient solution. to get there, like you're saying, in the quickest possible way. And if we make it easy, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be creating impact. So that's I think, yeah, the thinking over there.
Thank you so much for that summary. I'm sure our audience has plenty of questions, so I'll send it over to Melissa.
Thanks, Rachel. And hi, everybody. Great to see you guys. Savanika, I want to ask you a question. So I love in your presentation how you focus on low value plastic. This really is a world where not all plastics is created equal, right? And there's not necessarily solutions for every kind of plastic. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by low value plastic compared to other kind of plastics that have higher values and therefore, maybe different end of life solutions?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I love talking about garbage. I love talking about low value plastic and all of these sorts of things. And then so really when we think about high value and low value, what we're really talking about is economic value. Because just like any other sector, any other economic supply chain, waste management also focuses on profit. And then so when you have, whether it's a informal supply chain or formal supply chain, the focus is always on the type of recycling or the type of plastic that is most profitable. And typically that tends to be two defining characteristics. One is your higher order, like the thicker materials, like your PET and then HEP and so on. And also kind of like monomers, so materials that are like just one single layer that are therefore then easy to recycle. And then you have then it's almost kind of a hierarchy of materials that you have. And then at the worst kind, the low value ones that we talk about are your multi-laminates, the multi-layered packaging. So think about kind of like your chips wrappers or your Oreo packets, things that are made up of several layers of plastic, and maybe there's like an aluminum layer inside it as well. And so that is really, really hard to pull apart and then almost impossible to recycle. And therefore, no one has any incentive to pick it up. Like, well, it's really just trash. And so there's absolutely no incentive for whether it's formal or informal for you to actually deal with it. And so when we think about plastic credit financing, and again, bringing back this concept of ROI, impact ROI, like where will your every single dollar be able to have the most amount of impact on the ground? It's with this pot of kind of a plastic that is going to be ignored by default by pretty much everybody else. And so that's really where then we can come in and incentivize it and then make it financially feasible. So yeah, that's the kind of a distinction. Happy to dig in a little bit deeper, give more examples, but I'll stop there so it doesn't get too technical.
David, I see your hand up.
Melissa, I heard a radio commercial last week for recycled gold jewelry. And I thought, wow, that's going to remove a lot of material from our landfills and oceans because all that gold waste gets thrown out. It's obviously not. That's at the other end of the spectrum. But I'm very thankful that you're working at the right end of the spectrum for impact.
That's great, David. Savanika, the Pet Sustainability Coalition and rePurpose Global have been working together for several years now. I remember when I met your colleague Peter back in early 2019, and one of the things that really led me to be interested in rePurpose Global was your focus on offsets, but how that isn't the whole story, right? So I love on your slide, first there's the measurement, then there's the reduction and moving to sustainable solutions, and then the offsetting piece. So I'd love if you could talk about how plastic offsetting is playing into where does that fit in an overall sustainable packaging strategy, including, the reduction piece and moving towards recyclable, refillable, or compostable solutions. And then I'd love to hear from the panel as well. Lindsay, you said that you had moved to recycled packaging. So I'd love to know this is one piece of an overall strategy. But Savanika, I want to start with you. How does offsets and plastic neutrality fit? How should that fit into an overall strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question, Melissa. And I think the problem that we often see in the general community with general consumers when we have really complex issues like plastic, and this is the exact same thing with carbon, exact same thing with water, all of these different material usages, everyone's looking for a silver bullet solution, right? You just want that one thing, and that's the only thing you ever have to do. And then somehow, like, you've just waved a magic wand, and poof, everything is all perfect and good right now. But it rarely is like that. You rarely have those sorts of silver bullet solutions. And the slightly kind of like sadder, I guess, less fun answer is that you need a toolkit of solutions. You need kind of a good toolkit that works for your company, and it typically kind of has those four major components. Like any toolkit that you build will have four major components. The first one that we always talk about is just measurement. You have to measure your plastic footprint. You have to figure out where your problem lies. What are your kind of current usage levels? What materials are you using right now? And then once you measure it, then that's the way to then figure out what to do about it. Build that roadmap after that. And I think everybody on this panel, I think, has been National Dog Company, Catalyst, and then Nature's Logic, absolutely kind of fantastic in building that roadmap, and then showing how other brands should be doing it as well. And then thinking about, well, there is a longer term reduction strategy in place, and then there are so many answers over here. There's compostable, there's biomaterials. Some work in some cases, some don't. Some are greenwashing, some aren't. There's kind of, and then we can go into that whole rabbit hole as well. But then, of course, working with people like PSC, I think that's where the Pet Sustainability Coalition can play an important role as well in advising kind of what that right roadmap looks like. But then at the same time, you don't want to, say, well, I am working towards it. I'll get there in 10 years, but I'm going to continue polluting today. There needs to be some responsibility that is taken, immediately. Because the waste isn't waiting around for us. The people that are suffering, the animals that are suffering, that's not going to wait around. And then so that's where credits and offsets come in, where you're able to say, I am doing the right things, but I am still having to use plastic. And there are so many complexities with it: shelf life, quality, transportation, oxygen barriers, all of these different things that come in. And then so how are we able to kind of like, have some solution in place to at least neutralize, what we're doing in the meantime. And then finally, the fourth piece of it is then how that is communicated back to consumers. And I think that's also like something that we include in as a very integral piece, because it's not enough to just kind of like do the impact. I think it's really, really important these days to take the consumer on that journey along with you, to be genuine, to be transparent, and say, well, this is where we are, this is where we're looking to go, and this is the impact we're creating. Why don't you join us on this journey? And then so a combination of like those four pieces is essentially what any brand's toolkit, plastic action toolkit, needs to look like.
Well, Lindsay, I'd love to get your opinion on this. It sounds like plastic offsets is part of that a broader strategy that also includes recyclable packaging.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, for us, we are a small brand as well, and we've only been on the market for a couple of years, but we knew that sustainability was going to be a big core piece of what we do. And people talk about being sustainable. I think it's a catchphrase that a lot of companies use today, but it's important to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. So partnering with rePurpose Global is one element of us being able to do that and make a more immediate impact, but also the 100% recyclable packaging that we use today. And again, for us, the biggest hurdle that we have in the short term with that is consumer education, right? And making sure that consumers understand you can take that bag to a grocery store and recycle it, versus dumping it and throwing it away and adding to the pollution within the planet. And ultimately, our goal would be so that we're not just plastic neutral, but we're plastic negative in our impact onto the environment, whether that's through more education on people recycling their packaging or finding new packaging solutions that allow us to do that. But that's such a core element of who we are as a brand. And so for us, it's just a continuation of building blocks to help us achieve that goal.
That's fantastic. David, I see you nodding along. Do you want to talk about how plastic offsetting fits into, what is best practices for how that should fit into an overall packaging strategy?
Well, I'll really just agree with what I've already heard. We took the steps and we introduced 45% post-consumer recycled into a treat bag. It's relatively easy to do, but there are just additional steps, as my esteemed fellow panelist said. We need recyclable. We need to add more recycled, and it's just all part of that same journey.
Dan, I see you nodding. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're on the same path. I think what we've learned from PSC, especially when it comes to recyclability, is it really depends on the municipality of the consumer. You know, what was recyclable in Florida may not work in Northern Colorado, may not work elsewhere, and so we think of this as an overall strategy. And on our packaging, when we did the plastic neutral, we also did the number 4 recyclable, but then we added the H2R as well. So I agree with all of you guys. As much as we can get to the consumer and say, hey, let's try to keep this out of the ocean. Here are a couple steps, and hopefully this is kind of like masks and vaccines, where we've got a Swiss cheese approach to catching as much as we possibly can at once, and hopefully that's what we're accomplishing with being able to layer on a couple different steps.
I love that, Dan. And thanks for the call out. We actually are going to hear from How to Recycle in just a few hours. So all these talks, once again, keep colliding, which is fantastic. I've got a question about, talking about labeling that, Savanika, this is probably best for you. I'm going to summarize as best I can. But there's a question around claims. And, is there an implication with policymakers, specifically around plastic neutral? There's some concern. I'm wondering if policymakers have weighed in, and is there any concern about, this particular label or claims when it comes to kind of a regulatory point of view?
Yeah, I think the claim part is always interesting. I think, claims are really important, but they have to have this balance where it's condensed and intuitive enough for the consumer to just see it and understand what's happening. And it's not kind of really complicated and it's just a jumble of words and no one knows what that means. But at the same time, you also don't want it to be so simple that it can be misinterpreted. And you don't want it to be so simple that, again, it could mean 100 different things. And I think that's where plastic neutral was actually a really good one for us to land on, because we learned a lot from the carbon sector. And so there was already familiarity around the climate neutral space, carbon neutral space, and all of this kind of work that had been done to set up understanding in a consumer's mind from the carbon space. And so then we follow the same standards. And so just last year, we also launched the formal plastic neutral standards. And the plastic neutral standards is kind of one defining document that anybody in the world can look to, and anybody can say, well, if I follow these steps, that means I am plastic neutral. So there is no misinterpretation between what you're saying and between what I'm saying. And in the development of those standards, we actually worked with several policymakers. rePurpose right now sits on everything from a US plastic pact to a UK plastic pact to a Canada one, and there's an India one. We work with EPR policymakers to think about how neutrality fits in with extended producer responsibility from a regulatory credit standpoint. And so this came in consultation with a lot of different people from around the world, familiar with carbon, but familiar with plastic as well, to strike that right balance and then to make sure that when we are talking about these things, we are being as genuine and transparent, but also as communicative about it as possible. So yeah, and the standard is actually, the plastic neutral standards are there on our website to download if anyone wants to, have some light bedtime reading of a few hundred pages of some technical literature. You are able to do that on the website.
Nice end of the day reading after a 3-day packaging conference. Sounds lovely. Well, I want to thank you all so much for your time. But before we wrap up, I just want to do a quick round robin. I'm going to hand you the magic wand for 30 seconds. If you could make one kind of big change in packaging in the pet industry, what would it be? And Lindsay, we're going to give you the baton first.
Yeah, thanks. I think I'll speak more specifically for my brand, because I know that with food and things like that, there's other elements to consider, but we're a litter brand made out of wood. So some less, call it restrictions, I guess, on a packaging standpoint. But for us, what's really needs to change is to become, I'll call it plastic negative. And we're looking at that through several different lenses, whether that is through just continuing to push consumer education, but also really looking with our partner packaging vendors to push them and challenge them on how to make something that could be biodegradable. but still provides the durability that plastic provides, and finding that right solution in the long term. That's a big stick for us, and ultimately where we want to continue to push the pet industry so that we can all help achieve that goal together.
I love it. Dan, you've got your magic wand. What are you going to do with it?
Magic wand, and it doesn't have to be realistic today. I want to be able to open my package, take my product out, and then it just disintegrates by the time I'm done with the product that I've just taken out, and just there's nothing left. This is my dream.
So Dan, we're enacting universal compostable packaging, which sounds...
And instantaneously as well, without fire, no side benefit, off gassing or problems.
Sounds fantastic. What about you, David? Do you want to go a little bit closer to home with yours?
I love the magic wand, though. Well, first, I just want to thank you, Lindsay and Dan, and of course, Monica, for your leadership here. I really appreciate it. Leadership is the magic wand. But if I had to apply it to something, I'm biased with our Victor and Nature's Logic brands. It's the kibble bag, which is the brass ring in our industry. So we need to get our kibble bags recyclable, more recycled, et cetera. So that's where I would go.
Thanks. And I'm really excited to be working on with brands with that through our work on the packaging pledge. So Monica, I'll give you the last word. Why should the pet industry all be going plastic neutral by tomorrow?
That's a lot of pressure. And then I think I echo everything that was said already. But David actually took a little bit of what I was going to say, which is that, recently, like initially when we came into this, we were like, wow, companies, right? The answer lies with brands. Brands have this massive potential to change the world. And after years of doing this, what I have realized is that companies don't change the world, people do. And it's people within those companies that get them to take the right actions that actually change the world. And I think Dan, David, Lindsay over here, so it was not really Nature's Logic or the National Dog Company or Catalyst Pet. It was Dan and David and Lindsay who came in with that genuine passion to champion this and then push that and move that forward. And what we need more and more of are those champions within, the organizations that we see out there, saying that this is something that I will take responsibility for and then push forward within my organization. So with my magic wand, I'm actually just handing it back to everybody out there in the audience and then saying, you have that kind of capacity, you have the capability, the power really to move things forward within the company and therefore within the wider movement of things.
What we need is passion leaders, and we're so excited to work with such a group of such passionate and impactful leaders. So thank you all so much. This has been an amazing panel, and thank you for your great work.